Tonight, investigating a mass killing. New details into the deaths of an Ottawa mother, her children, and a friend. A shattered community and a shocked landlord.
I was not even aware that this person was living.
The grief of an injured surviving father.
His life has been turned upside down.
All in a month's work. The surprise gains for Canada's labour market.
But it still remains in decent shape.
Also, the bitter season for wineries at the mercy of wild weather.
There is widespread bud damage.
Plus, reversing the pause, Ottawa restores funding to a UN agency in Gaza.
Much needed support to over 2 million Palestinians.
And springing forward with a daylight dilemma.
It can dysregulate major systems in our body.
The case for and against the time change.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Overcome by shock and sadness, people in an Ottawa community are struggling to make sense of the mass killing that left 6 people dead, including a mother and her 4 young children. As their father, friends, and police continue their search for answers. CTV's Judy Trin has new details tonight on the murder weapon and the suspect.
Firefighters tasked with cleaning the blood from a horrific crime scene, which stretches from the victim's home to the house next door. Ottawa police sources say the main weapon was similar to a hunting knife, and multiple knives may have been used. 6 people were killed. Collecting evidence is painstaking work.
We have that desire to ensure no mistakes are made, and they process all the evidence that they possibly can to ensure that these people's deaths are properly addressed in court.
Only the father, Danushka Wickramasinghe, an Uber driver who also owned a cleaning company, survived the attack. But his wife and 4 children were killed. One was just a baby. A 40-year-old friend who lives with the family was also fatally stabbed. It came as a surprise to the landlord that the suspect also lived in the house.
It shocked me. There was somebody involved in the property who can do this to the family, and I was not even aware of that this person was living in there.
Like his victims, Fabio De Souza is from Sri Lanka. He was studying at Algonquin College, but the 19-year-old dropped out about a year ago. After being flagged down by the distraught father screaming in the street, police entered the home and found De Souza inside and arrested him without incident. De Souza is now facing 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder.
The shocking nature of it may call into question a person's mental health, and could be good cause to look into that to determine fitness to stand trial and or whether or not they have a disease of the mind that contributed to the allegation itself.
De Souza will be back in court next week. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan High Commission is working with the federal government to expedite visas for the victims' relatives so they can come here to help a grieving father prepare for a funeral. Heather.
Judy, thank you. That father, now faced with this horrifying loss, is in the thoughts of many tonight, concerned for his recovery. He survived the attack and was taken to hospital. CTV's Jeremy Charon joins me now. What are we learning about the family, Jeremy?
Heather, we know the family belonged to this Buddhist temple here in Ottawa. The resident monk here is sharing some of the terrifying moments the father experienced Wednesday night.
This is where the Vikrama Singer family often gathered. A place of worship, today mourning a tragic loss.
Beautiful family and kind family.
Banthe Sunetha visited the father in hospital. He says the father and eldest son visited the temple just last weekend.
At the end, I asked, what did you learn? They replied very well, and I got to know he is very bright and courageous.
Sunetha says the father told him he arrived home from working a late job Wednesday when he was met with tragedy at his front door.
Also, he lost, half of his finger, and one is also another damage, 2 fingers damage, and one face near the eyes and nose.
Just around the corner from the family's home, where a vigil was held Thursday, a memorial is growing. People stopping to place flowers, stuffed animals, and leave messages for a mother and her 4 kids killed in their own home.
It was important to us to come bring a little plush toy and some flowers and show up for the community during this time.
A community now coming together in support, says this Sri Lankan Canadian cabinet minister who laid flowers here today and spoke with the father in hospital.
You can say time will heal, I don't know, in this circumstance, because his life has been turned upside down.
The monk here tells us the family had welcomed the suspect into their home because he was going through a difficult time and had nowhere to stay. Heather, they were trying to help this young man. What's not clear is what then happened that led to this terrible tragedy.
All right, Jeremy, thank you. An unthinkable tragedy struck west of Gaza City today. An airdrop meant to bring help to those in despair turned deadly. Watch as a parachute fails to open and the package comes apart in midair before plummeting to the ground. 5 people were crushed to death, 10 others injured, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Parachutes for aid drops are part of a new pledge by Ottawa to try and help civilians in Gaza. But a more contentious move involves an announcement to restore funding to a UN agency. It was suspended after allegations some staff were involved in the October 7th attack by Hamas. CTV's Adrian Gabriel reports.
As the situation on the ground in Gaza turns from desperate to dire, Canada announced an about-face today.
We're looking at the mass starvation of children, women and men in northern Gaza particularly.
Canada is the first G7 country to restart relief funding for UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. Canada's Minister of International Development saying holding back aid is no longer a viable option, even for an organization still under an active investigation for its ties to Hamas.
UNRWA is the backbone of the humanitarian response to the needs of Palestinian civilians in Gaza.
So far, the Canadian government has only reviewed an interim report following allegations that some UNRWA staff were involved in the Hamas attacks on October 7th. Those workers have since been released by the UN.
We know that the situation on the ground is horrendous. We have children dying of starvation.
These are all stacks of Canadian humanitarian aid, and in similar warehouses in Jordan and in Dubai right now, there's identical skids of federal relief, which are set to head into Gaza.
I was in Jordan yesterday and I saw these essential goods being loaded into planes destined for Gaza.
With the risk of widespread famine on the ground, Canada will now also be helping from above, announcing it will be assisting Jordan and the World Food Programme with airdrops into northern Gaza. While desperately needed, it's far from an ideal situation.
We're just going to see panic, and it's going to be absolutely chaos on the ground.
With the Islamic holy month of Ramadan just days away, the outlook remains bleak. Ceasefire talks ended this week in Cairo without a deal in place. It should go without saying, but the minister also reiterated today that Canada has a zero-tolerance policy for any UN staff working with a terrorist organization. Heather.
Thanks, Adrian. The federal government also announced nearly $1 billion in funding today for Canadian Forces based Trenton. Defense Minister Bill Blair says $850 million will help upgrade the Ontario base for a new military transport fleet. The CC-330 Husky transport aircraft will replace the aging Polaris. Some surprisingly good news on the jobs front across the country. Canada added 41,000 new positions in February, surpassing expectations for the second month in a row. But the unemployment rate saw a slight uptick from 5.7% in January to 5.8% as the labor pool grows rapidly. BNN Bloomberg's John Ehrlichman is here to break down the numbers for us. John.
Well, Heather, on the surface, the jobs market in Canada looks relatively strong. And in fact, if you look at this data and you compare it to the last year, there were only 4 other months that had stronger job creation. But when you start to take a closer look at the numbers, there are some other trends to be mindful of. First of all, the unemployment rate. It now stands at 5.8%. That has been trending higher. Second, wage growth. We are still seeing it, but at a lesser pace. And then at a time when we are seeing record population growth in this country, the number of new jobs being created is simply not keeping pace with that trend. And then there's the story of where jobs are being created. For example, during the month, we saw new government positions created. We saw the number of self-employed Canadians on the rise. What we're not seeing is bigger businesses, private companies, create a robust number of jobs right now. This was also a week where the Bank of Canada decided to hold the line on interest rates. They are still concerned about inflation, but obviously some people are curious about where the economy goes from here, especially if interest rates stay at their current level. So economists today said that if we continue to see those trends of fewer private businesses hiring, that's going to be the thing that Bank of Canada officials are going to closely monitor in the months and weeks ahead. Heather?
All right, BNN Bloomberg's John Ehrlichman, thank you. Some industries seem to be facing a never-ending battle back from pandemic pressures. But for some businesses, it's not the economy adding an extra challenge, it's bad weather. In BC, a January deep freeze has growers fearing major crop losses and billions of dollars in lost revenue. CTV's Andrew Johnson reports.
It's balmy, the crops bathing in sunshine. But in BC's wine country, the damage has already been done.
It's getting to be a bigger gamble each and every year.
The winter started exceptionally warm. Then in January, temperatures suddenly plunged. A shock many grapevines and fruit trees just couldn't take.
It's green, but you see that's also look a little bit of brownness in it. That means it's dying back.
West Kelowna's Kalalo Organic Winery estimates 95% of this year's grape crop has been destroyed. The losses will be staggering.
I will say $2 to $3 million.
And in this province, trouble for grape growers is bad for everyone. There are close to 350 licensed wineries in the province that welcome more than 1 million visitors per year, overall generating a giant $3.75 billion for the British Columbia economy.
Once the blossom hits, we'll have a much better idea.
Grapes aren't the only crop in trouble, so are the fruit trees and orchards like Farming Karma Fruit Co.
The last several years have been pretty gloomy for apple and cherry growers.
Extreme weather is hitting BC's Okanagan more often. Producers are trying to protect themselves by diversifying. Farming Karma has launched several lines of sparkling drinks. Some growers are getting second jobs. Others are simply in over their heads.
When the money comes in, it's not enough to make mortgage payments, so a lot of people end up leveraging the equity in their land.
Fruit growers keep calling on the province for new support. In a statement today, BC's Agriculture Minister acknowledges more needs to be done and tells us she'll be meeting with wine producers next week. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
A major winter storm system is pounding parts of Canada's east coast tonight, with Newfoundland taking much of the hit.
It's like shoveling sand, like I said, so it's just trying to stay on top of it.
With roads and cars buried under huge mounds of snow, residents are digging out. More than 30 centimeters of snow fell today, shutting down schools and government offices, even some healthcare centers across the island.
There's a lot of snow out there, so it's going to be a heavy cleanup tomorrow.
St. John's mayor says crews are working hard round the clock to keep roads clear, but up to 90 centimeters of snow is expected in some areas by tomorrow. United Airlines is facing yet another mishap today following a series of issues this week. This Boeing 737 with 166 passengers and crew on board rolled off the runway and got stuck in the grass in Houston. It comes one day after that alarming video showing United plane losing a tire upon takeoff, and this United engine fire on Monday caused by bubble wrap stuck inside. Still ahead, gearing up for gender equality.
Females are now able to make money. They're able to play the sport they love.
Shared goals, triumphs, and challenges from the rink to the office. Plus, a timely debate on daylight saving. On this International Women's Day, France marked the occasion by becoming the first country in the world to inscribe abortion rights into its constitution. But a day of celebration for some was one of protest for others as hundreds marched in countries around the globe. In Spain, tens of thousands of people marched through Madrid, chanting and setting off flares demanding equality for women. In Manila, demonstrators in pink called for the advancement of women's rights, while in Bangkok, they gathered in front of Thailand's Democracy Monument demanding longer maternity leave. And in Afghanistan, women hid their faces, calling for greater access to education and an end to the Taliban's oppressive restrictions. Here at home, women are fighting to close the gender pay gap and for a bigger presence in boardrooms. CTV's Sarah Plowman has more on the power play.
University hockey players have something new to shoot for this International Women's Day. The Professional Women's Hockey League offers inspiration and to some, an aspiration.
You got a professional league where females are now able to make money, they're able to play the sport they love on a bigger stage.
Assistant coach Cassidy Hillworth played in the now collapsed Canadian Women's Hockey League. She predicts the PWHL will be different.
They're really putting the infrastructure in to make this league something that will last.
From rinks to offices, women are striving for gender equality. A new report on women in business shows they make up 48% of the workforce, but only 35% of managers and 21% of boardroom directors. Across the country, pay gaps persist.
Women are now paid less than men, still 8.5% less than men.
Nadia Barry-Fugelstad is a financial advisor, and she sees a big difference in her clients' accounts.
I really feel for, single moms out there in particular, because if they are typically paid less than their male counterparts, obviously they're struggling more with the cost of living.
This year, the United Nations message is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress, a mission shared by those mentoring female entrepreneurs.
A lot of my work is centered around making sure that people have the right information to make good decisions.
Fields like science and technology are male-dominated. As tech like AI advances, there's a push to engage more girls.
So that, again, they're not left behind, so that they're participating in the design of these technologies. These are underpinning our life, how we work, how we play, how we learn.
One more arena where the goal is to close any gaps. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Still ahead, fear of the unknown.
We keep the drapes closed now, and our doors are always locked, double-checked.
A secret society preying on a small Saskatchewan community. An extremist cult leader and her followers have set up camp in a small Saskatchewan community. The self-proclaimed Queen of Canada has offered up threats, even calling for a public execution of elected officials. W5's Morella Fernandez on the beliefs and behavior concerning the neighborhood.
Welcome to Richmount, a village in the southern part of Saskatchewan. Population, about 120. More now that new neighbors have moved in.
I saw a vehicle coming down this road here. What the heck is that?
Last September, longtime resident Roland Davis noticed the convoy right away. She says, hard not to. And they definitely noticed her.
I could feel someone looking at me or watching me. I spotted someone and they actually had their phone and they were taking pictures. They probably have 1,000 pictures of me.
Davis says she has no idea why they record her. The orders come from this woman, who calls herself the Queen of Canada.
Royal decrees that I have issued, basically removing all of the shackles put by the corporation government.
Her name is Romana Didalo. She's a conspiracy theorist who wants to do away with any kind of official authority and punish healthcare workers who vaccinated children during the pandemic.
For each child that you have harmed, you will receive not 1, but 2 bullets on your forehead.
Didalo live streams these messages to tens of thousands of followers every day. And for some, her wish is their command. The mayor of Richmount has received several threatening letters since the group moved in.
Like, I would be dumb not to say that it doesn't affect myself and my wife. Like, we keep the drapes closed now, and our doors are always locked, double checked.
The RCMP is investigating the death threats, but says they don't have enough evidence to charge anyone. And so far, all other efforts to oust the group have failed. At the W5 Town Hall, it was clear fear of the unknown is preying on this community.
Your little kids come home and ask, why are they videoing us? Why is there a fence around? And our kids don't feel safe. I don't feel safe.
I've had to see my family, their mental health go down the frickin' drain because they don't want to leave their farm. They have to look over their shoulder. It changes their whole life.
Morella Fernandez, CTV News, Richmond, Saskatchewan.
And you can see the full report tomorrow. The Cult Queen airs on W5 on CTV this Saturday at 7. After the break, it's that time of year. The pros and cons of resetting our clocks. Most Canadians will spring forward this weekend. Simply put, we lose an hour of sleep. But it's much more complicated than that, and there's a big push to ditch the switch on daylight saving time. CTV's Kamal Karamali joins me now to unwind the tension behind the time change. Kamal.
Heather, at 2 a.m. Sunday, most Canadians will lose an hour of sleep, and sleep researchers say the sudden shift has been proven to take a toll on our physical health and mental well-being. Statistics have shown an increased risk of workplace accidents and car accidents and vascular events like stroke and heart attacks. It can also result in mood disturbances, all because it disrupts our circadian rhythm, which tells our body when it's time to sleep and wake up.
So from the mental health side, this time change is associated with an increase of depression and suicide attempts. When we move to daylight saving time, we're essentially adding extra light exposure at the end of the day, which is not conducive to good sleep at night. And that poorer sleep leads to poorer health overall.
So some sleep hygiene tips to help you this weekend. Avoid napping on Saturday so you feel sleepier later at night. Don't eat or drink right before bed. Exercise on Saturday so you've worked off all that energy. And take part in relaxing activities before bed. Don't go on your phone. And maintaining the same sleep and wake-up times leading up to Sunday also helps. There's been a growing push to ditch the switch. Both Ontario and BC passed legislation to do just that, but haven't implemented it yet because they've been waiting on their U.S. counterparts to act. A bill was introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives in March of last year, but so far it remains idle. Heather.
A debate that certainly takes up a lot of time. Thank you. That's it for us tonight. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.